Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, lately things have not felt simple, not even in the least bit. However, I feel that is our responsibility, is to find the people out there that are doing incredible work for other people, lifting spirits up, sharing stories, and having those hard conversations. So the thing I want to simplify today is how to live a life of substance. And when we first connected with this special guest, we thought, well, this is a topic in regards to, human identity, maybe career paths and all things. But what I realized is with all things going on in the news lately, it's so much more. So I'd like to introduce to you my guest today. Her name is Maaria Mozaffar, and she is a civil rights lawyer, mediator, legislative drafter, the author of More Than Pretty, a mother, a wife, and a triathlete. She's also the host of a new digital series called A Way Forward, leading people through difficult conversations during difficult times, where we may feel safe but stuck. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Maaria Mozaffar. Hello, Maaria.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here as well. And I just have to tell you right out the gate, one of the best parts of being a podcaster is at the very end of my conversations, I ask a very simple question. I say, hey, who do you know that's up to brilliant things in the world? And would you believe, Maaria, that you and I having this conversation today is a result of 6 conversations back. So Carrie Conti led me to Bernadette Knoll, who led me to Elizabeth McGuire, who led me to Nancy Davis Coe, Ada Calhoun, Alicia Haywood, and now to you.
Wow.
And what I love about that in particular is that 7 brilliant women doing brilliant work out in the world, serving people and really standing in their power. But B, it really shows us that when we as women come together, we are unstoppable. So yes, I'm so thrilled that you're here and that we're talking today. Now, I want to start the conversation here. How do you define a life of substance? And why is it that it feels like, especially now, that we as a human race are so polarized and so disconnected now more than ever before?
So your first question, how do I define a life of substance?
Yeah.
I define it as a life in which you are not distracted by things that are frivolous, that bring you down, that distract you from your utmost potential of what your purpose is to be on this earth, and that you are connecting your heart, your soul, your mind with your actions. That's what I feel a life of substance is.
And what I feel like we as a society, and I'll be the first to put my hand up and admit, places where life has felt very vapid in the past. You buy stuff to fill a living room so that you can take a pretty picture on Instagram, and it, weeks turn into months, turn into years, and you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm 42. How did that happen? I feel like we, prior to maybe 2020, were all sort of living a version of that lie. And this year, my goodness, has been the year of perfect vision, 2020 vision entirely. Have you seen that as well?
I absolutely agree with you. And I feel you are completely correct, because leading up to this point, there are so many distractions in front of us, right? So we have technology, we have Instagram, we have social media in all forms. We also have a lot of bombardment through social media of consumer-driven industries that are telling you that you need to fill yourself up. And you're correct, with a pun on terms, it's like 2020, everything was put on a pause.
Yeah.
And we are now able to, if we take the opportunity, it's all about taking the opportunity to make that shift and say, wait a minute, what do I actually need and what is actually being pushed on me? And I think that is really, and I love how you call it a lie, because there are lies that are being fed to us that we have for too long accepted and then perpetuated ourselves.
Yeah, because it's the lie of not enough, right?
Not
you
enough.
have something wrong with you. You are either doing or saying or being not enough. But hey, you know what? If you buy this course, or if you purchase this makeup, or if you get that home decor, then maybe then it will be enough. but it never is enough. And I should say right at the top of our conversation, we're recording this on June 5th, 2020, in the wake of George Floyd's horrific death. I mean, people are angry and hurting right now, as we should be, as a nation and society globally. So I want to talk about that as well. How do we become part of the solution and truly rebuild from this together?
Well, first of all, I'm very humbled, Mary, and I think that's the first step that we need to take that you just took, which is to say his name as if you know him.
Yeah.
He doesn't need an introduction. We become a part of him, and we try to connect with the tragedy that has happened beyond a headline. I think that's the first step.
Yeah.
But I think the second step is to understand that we are interconnected in this society and in this community, community being the globally connected community. And all of our actions actually have a domino effect on other people. So when we are distracted, when we're so busy trying to fill ourselves up by the companies that tell us these lies, and we buy into it, we are actually taking time away, and we are taking the focus of our gaze to places where they don't belong. Now, if everybody had, through the last 10, 15, 20 years, and of course, much earlier than that, had always been focused on how people around us are feeling and are being treated in relative to how we are being treated, and rolling up our sleeves in small ways and large ways to minimize that, these types of things wouldn't be such a shock. Because we would know, A, that they exist, B, that we've done something about it, and C, that we can do something in the future. And this is what the shock is. It's a wake-up call that this happened on our watch, and I think people are rolling up their sleeves saying, wait, our means our watch, which means we are complicit.
Right.
And if we continue the same approach of watching headlines and feeling bad about them, then we are continuing to be complicit.
Right. And I think what I hear in what you're saying there is it's a shifting of focus entirely. Whereas prior to this, and by the way, police brutality, people being hurt and killed by others and in charge has been happening for decades.
Right.
It's not like it's just this new thing that's happened. You're like, oh my gosh, how could this happen in our day and age of 2020? It's been happening for decades. It's just the fact that things are now getting videotaped and documented, and we're becoming much more aware of it because everybody has a phone in their pocket. So what I think I'm hearing you say here, and tell me if I'm right or wrong now, is that it's a shift from just self-reflection, just making sure my bubble is okay and everything is good in my perfect Instagram life, and shifting the focus outward to our neighbors, to our community, to our city, to people that we walk by every single day on our streets and don't even acknowledge with eye contact or a smile. It's so much bigger than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to who we want to be. It comes down to who as an individual we want to be. And I don't want to take away from how important the work is to working on yourself.
Yeah.
But it's in order to work for yourself, to be able to give to somebody else. And that's when you actually realize that's what yourself is all about. You're here to serve a certain purpose, not just to serve yourself, but serve everyone you interact with. And the question of who you are, it's not your label, it's not your zip code, it's not the house you live in or the shoes you wear and the designer clothes you wear, or even the professional title you have, or the graduate degree you have. It's actually about your values. It's about integrity, compassion. Though that is who you are. And if you identify with your values, you will walk in that space all the time, and then you will constantly be acting out in those actions. So if you see, I hate to use just a cliche example, but that's why that example is shown all the time of an old lady walking down the street. Old ladies are walking down the street all the time, but not everyone stops to help them. So why is that a cliche? Because there are situations around us all the time that are impacting somebody negatively, and we are bystanders. We pass them by so many times. How many times have all of us seen police cars stop somebody that's African American? So many times, because this is statistically true for various reasons, and they escalate. And so I always say, when you are in those situations, in this case, we're talking about police brutality and you're a bystander, refuse to be just a bystander. Stop your car, make sure that the police officers know you're a witness, and then take that attitude to every other thing that you see that you feel like something's not right with somebody.
And I think the point is well made. It's not one versus the others. I think there is a balance of self-reflection, improvement over time as you read more, as you listen more, as you learn and talk to people who look completely different from you, you grow. And equally focusing on others in your community and even absolute strangers where you see things that are happening that are an absolute injustice, to say, this is something that I have a stake in because it aligns with my core values. That is the type of person with this type of integrity. That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we also have to understand that it's a domino effect, right? So selfishness or serving the self is a learned behavior. Consumer-driven industries give you that. But then if you are a role model and you model it yourself and you practice this skill, then other people pass it on. And then I think we also have to recognize, just like you stated, we started this conversation about all those distractions of Instagram and social media. But at the same time, through these mediums is also where we see these videos. Yeah. So there are people clearly who have a linear connection with their soul and their purpose, and they're using their social media in a different way. And they were able to get it to you, and they were able to amplify the issue. So there are people who are walking around that use these tools that can use to distract and are using it to better other people and serve community. And that's what we can all do. And that's how we find that balance.
Yeah. And, I feel it. And, I am a white woman, though I'm actually mixed. My birth mother is Mexican-American. My birth father is white, but I present white in the world. And, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, I remember that whole week of seeing the people who were just not saying anything. The silence was deafening. And when I talk to some of those people, both family and friends, privately, and go, hey, what do you feel about this? I heard a tone of, seeing the video, hearing the news coverage and going, oh, gosh, that's horrible. But then going also, well, that's not me. That doesn't really affect me. And then just sort of moving on with their day. And it breaks my heart because I think that there is a certain factor of people that goes, that's tough, but that's not my game. That's not my arena to be in. I think simply showing, that you stand with people, that you do see the injustice of it. I think this does come back to what you're saying about living a life of substance, standing for something greater than the superficial. So really, anybody that's listening, I want you to know that this is not meant to shame you. If you had those feelings when that all went down, I think it's really important to know, like, if that did happen and that was the feeling you had and you go, oh, yeah, it's not my game, it's not my arena, then really taking a moment to pause and lean in a little bit and ask questions, or even simply watching 13th, the documentary on Netflix, just taking a moment to understand maybe the deeper layers underneath it, I find is just as powerful.
Yeah. And I just want to say, it's so important for you to say that this is not to shame anyone, because you cannot have growth in people if you make them feel bad about wanting to grow. And we feel that everybody has a potential to grow, we as a world, right? But I also want to say that the opportunity and the fact that this was witnessed, whether it be in your news feed or somebody talking about it in your family where you were having to comment, these are all deliberate little knocks, right? They're little deliberate opportunities where the universe or God, the creator, whoever you lean on as the big person in control or the big being in control, is wanting you to witness something.
Yeah.
And people respond in different ways, but a response is required.
Yeah.
And your statement where you said that some people will say, this is really not my realm, or this is not, my arena. You're in the arena because you're human. It crossed your eyes and your eyeballs. You're in the arena. So we are definitely all participating in some way, either by being silent, which may become complicit, or by being actively against it, or perpetuating it and promoting it.
Yeah.
And we have to decide. We have to decide as humans which camp we want to be in. And as we just witnessed, that the better forces will always win, because we've just seen that people are now talking about it and people have used social media to amplify it.
Yeah. I mean, even in my own feed, I'm seeing friends and friends of friends who are going out and volunteering as street medics at the protests, or doing cleanup efforts, or feeding people, and having and pushing to their local city councils to have these conversations. And that is the key. I think that sometimes it feels like, well, yeah, I'm not a protester. I'm not a person quite like that. Well, guess what? There's no one way to create change. There are many lanes to the highway, and become part of that solution. It sounds like that's the first step, is to understand where you are in where you stand, and
Absolutely.
then choosing how you're going to react and in essence, influence your pocket, your friends, your family around the dinner table.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that there is a response to everything that could cause apathy or hesitation. There's a response that will encourage you to do the opposite. Yeah. One is, we're all connected. Number two, you're definitely in the arena. Number three, this is deliberate. Number four, everyone's been given a certain skill set and they're not the same as anybody else. So identify what your skill set is. It may be to write. It may be to call a legislator. It may be to protest. It may be able to do arts, something that educates somebody to influence in a positive direction.
Definitely. So talk to us about your Skinless project. What is it, and what were some of the lessons learned here to really help not only yourself, but others that follow you to live a life of substance?
So it's interesting. I think that we're all people that are evolving, and I feel that God sends us different messages, and then you just keep moving, and it gets you to where you need to go. So Skinless Project was one of those things for me in the process of where I am now. It is actually a global platform for women. It has inspirational stories. It has interviews, and it has a nice Facebook community. But it really paved the way for me to connect with other women and see interesting things that women are doing globally. And it really inspired me to make the world smaller for other people, to defy stereotypes. And really, that term Skinless Project I came up with to really talk about the fact that we are more than skin deep, and the foundation of who we are is inward, and that's what we should really develop. And it gave me the ability to talk about the pressures of superficial things, but also to talk about issues like George Floyd, right? Yeah. To talk about what that actually means. And I think that whole pathway just connected me to an inspirational journey of meeting powerful women. So it's been wonderful.
And, again, I think that's where power does lay for women in particular, is when you start to bust out of your bubble, your echo chamber of people that look and seem like you and talk like you and have same political beliefs and all things, but actually meeting people who look completely different from you, who are on the different side of the planet or the different side of the country. That's where true growth and learning happens, right?
Absolutely. And I think that we have to also understand that we are not supposed to be the same at all, because God has created us in different tribes, and that's a quote that I always look at in the Quran, that which basically states that we made you of different nations and tribes so you may know one another. So the whole point is that it behooves us to know one another and be appreciating diversity and really grow.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, when you're going through some trials and tribulations in your life, no matter how big or small, I know for me, when I'm in the thick of it, I feel better when I do reach out. If I sit and stew and isolate, then it just goes downhill fast, right? But even when I reach out to others and they go, man, that's a lot. There's resonance, and when others share their story of like, oof, I was in a situation kind of like that, and this is what I felt, and this is what helped me. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. I'm not crazy or whatever.
Yeah. And you bring a really good point, because we are, as humans, supposed to be connected for that purpose.
Yeah.
Because it consistently gives us mentorship and perspective, and we kind of create these alliances to create strategies of how we can navigate life, and we can't do it on our own. I mean, there are different people who have so many tokens of wisdom that you can learn, and also I want to state that wisdom can look different.
Yeah.
So you may not, you don't have to look up a PhD on anxiety and stress to figure out how to deal with anxiety. You may want to talk to a friend that maybe lost a child, and just watch how she has been moving through her life. And you'll get all the answers right there of how she's been able to move forward. That will be incredible. So there's lessons around us of life experiences that are supposed to lend to us of how we can experience life in a more joyous way on our own.
And it's an everyday process. It's not like a to-do list. Check it off. Boop, ding. My life is perfect now. It's an everyday process as you grow and evolve. I mean, you wrote a book recently called More Than Pretty: How to Live a Life of Substance in an Artificial World. And even on your back cover, I'd love to read that for people so they can hear it. You say, women of the world have woken up. Nations have begun to understand that the conditions of our present societies cannot improve if women are not contributing their talents, minds, and innovation. Women have also woken up to the realization that for far too long, their own conditions have been monitored and maintained without women at the table. I mean, preach there. We uniquely, to our own gender, have been chosen to carry and birth life, and we are outliving our male counterparts. This is a critical moment for all of us as mothers, daughters, and sisters. This is the moment where we will decide how to lead in obligation as the world's responsibilities call to us. We need to be prepared. We need to be focused. We need to do. This book is dedicated for all of you awake and ready. And that feels like almost like a manifesto. I feel your spirit in those words, and I think what I hear in that is that even in this, in a pandemic, in police brutality, in all things on the verge of our economy kind of going bust. This is the time for us to rise up and to step into leadership roles, and to share our strengths, our knowledge, our empathy, our kindness, to make change. This is not a time to numb.
Absolutely. We don't have the choice to numb, first of all, because the children that are young now are going to be impacted for generations to come. So we cannot be numb. But also, I think it's very important to know that everyone is in a different space with a different skill set and different circumstances. But the only thing that's required as a human being to be able to move this forward, and what I mean moving us forward, is to get us to a place where we are all trying to do the best that we can as far as fulfilling our purpose.
Exactly.
That's what we mean. We have to figure out very clearly with a strong intent, what am I supposed to do here? Why am I here and not hit by a truck in a grave? Because many people are, right? Why am I able to speak while other people cannot speak? Why am I able to see while other people cannot see? Whatever you have, as far as your cognitive faculties, your physical strength, and your talents and skills that are God-given, what are you supposed to do with them? And once we figure that out, then everything is a domino effect. And we're living the best of ourselves. And I want to be clear, there's this phrase about living your best life. Living your best, and I wish I could complete that sentence, because living your best life could be like, everything's great, everything's awesome, and it's me. And that's great, meaning that you're happy. You've taken and you've taken and you've taken. But living your best life means that you understand how you're connected to the rest of the world. That's what it actually means. That's when you become your best.
And your rising tides helps all. I mean, I think that's the thing. And I want to be very, very clear. I know I have male listeners. Like, we're not bashing men whatsoever. We are just simply saying that women also can be equal, and we can come to the table and provide a different approach to certain things.
Yeah, and I want to kind of pick that a little bit up if that's okay
Please.
with you. It's not a question of we can be equal. We are already equal. We already know that. We're equal as human beings. That is a God-given right. What has not made us equal is the misconceptions perpetuated by institutions that are run by men that have made decisions based on a misunderstanding of the contributions and the potential of women. But we can't blame it on men only because women bought into the narrative. And you can say what comes first, the chicken and the egg, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to have a partnership in the failure and a partnership in the responsibility. There were many women who were on the streets who said this is not okay, but there were many women who were not. Yeah. There were many women who were on the streets during the civil rights movement. There are many women who are not. So when it all comes down to it, it's not going to help us to point to one demographic, but we definitely can point to a dynamic, and a dynamic only exists by the working together of parties. And so it's very important for men to understand that this is not a pointing at you, but there is a societal infrastructure that has been created, and it could have been just by one shift that started it, but there could be one shift that can negate this now. And we have to work together to get there.
Very good point. Well made. Absolutely. And you know what I think gets my hide is that we as women, I mean, I'm 42. I've heard it many, many times over, especially when I was a little girl, of, just be nice. You have to be, nice and don't make a fuss and straighten your bow and whatever those are. Talk to me about your thoughts on being nice versus maybe being polite, especially for women.
Yeah, I actually have a chapter of this in my book. I break apart a lot of terms that have been fed to us and different skills of how we can move forward and take it on in a different way. Nice has been problematic for many reasons, because when we use the word nice, we always encourage girls to be nice, but we give the power to somebody else to decide whether they are nice, right? So you could do something, but somebody else may not think it's very nice. And so it's one of those terms that we're striving, but somebody else holds the power. Yeah. What I like about the word polite, and this is the word I use with my kids, is that be polite, is that polite takes into consideration who you're interacting with. So you're not just serving yourself, you're actually caring about how the other person feels when you're interacting with them. So I like that word. But I also feel like it gives you the ability to set your boundaries. So I always share the phrase of no thank you, of how powerful that phrase is. And it's a polite word, right? So you're saying, if you're saying, hey, would you want to participate in this? Like, this is something that's great for you. And how many times do we get shoved stuff down, whether it be food we don't want, or choices we don't want, or career paths we never wanted to do, responsibilities we don't want to take on. It's like, this would be great for you, don't you think? Oh, yeah, thanks. Like, what if we got in the habit of saying, no, thank you? Yeah. Meaning you set your boundaries first. Yep. That's a habit. No. And then you say thank you, but thank you for thinking of me, right? I don't want you to feel like I'm being hostile, but no, thank you. And I think we have to be okay with accepting that boundaries are polite. And not only are boundaries polite, but boundaries are necessary. Because remember how we were talking about that we can be role models and then it's a domino effect? Yeah. You give other people permission to have their own boundaries. I mean, I was just thinking about, just in my mind, because of everything I needed to do before we got to this conversation, Mary, I was, because this was what was on my agenda today, mopping the floors and serving breakfast and doing all those things. But if I could do it, I could literally do it, and I could be like right where I need to be on time. Yeah. But I had so many different things leading up to it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a choice that I made. But many of us are given all those things and we are not able to say no. And we end up exhausted and tired and resentful.
Yeah.
So just because we want to be nice. So what if we just focus on being polite? And I think that's our trump card.
That it's very powerful. Our words are incredibly powerful. And I think what I hear in that is polite is rooted in respect, self-respect and respect for others, and that boundaries are a good thing. I talked to Nancy Levin. I'll link it up in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. She wrote a book on how to set healthy boundaries. And one of the very first points she said is that, you know what? It's not that other people are trampling on your boundaries. It's that you are letting them. And so you are the first person who tramples over your own boundaries when you release them or let things slide. So that is huge. And so it sounds like to me also for women to begin to define themselves in more healthy ways, it's not about comparing yourselves to others. And you and I spoke previously, you talk about how it's back it up with proof. Show the receipts. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, back it up. So a couple of things. One thing you touched on is like versus respect. I think polite also leads your pathway to be respected. It's better to be respected than be liked.
Yeah.
But also, when you are in this setting, and we can link it to this. So we're in this setting, we're being polite, we've set our boundaries, and let's say somebody doesn't like it, right? Doesn't like that. So then they have a different description of you, like she's bossy, she's stubborn, she's very difficult to deal with, and it's just like no talking to her. You can't even get in a conversation with her. So we have these different descriptions that people use. It's very important in that time to be able to have your own language to define who you are. Yeah. That's what I mean by backing it up. So, and this is how we move and navigate through conversations on our own terms, is that we say, wait a minute, I set my boundaries. My intent was to be polite. I did not mean any disrespect. And then we back it up with those narratives or experiences in our life which prove that we're polite to ourselves. Because many times I will tell you, people will call you certain things or you'll overhear certain things and you're like, am I that person? Wait, let me think about this. Am I really? And it's not a futile exercise to reflect, because I think you should be responsible of how you're coming off, right? So it's a good exercise to reflect, but then remind yourself, go back in your pattern of the thing that you are being categorized for, and remind yourself and analyze what the pattern has been in your life. And if you feel like, no, I was here for this, I was here for that, I was here for this, and then back it up for yourself, then that'll give you the confidence to be like, that's not me. And you change the language around how people are describing you. And I think that's very important. And I think it also serves a second purpose, that you may analyze that maybe somebody does have a grievance. So it's doing both. It's taking accountability, and you'll set boundaries for yourself not to be that person again.
A point well made. And again, if you are resonating with what Maaria is talking about here, I highly recommend picking up her book. It's called More Than Pretty: How to Live a Life of Substance in an Artificial World. It's sold wherever books are found, and you can find that anywhere. So I highly recommend checking that out. Also, don't forget all the links to her website, her social media links are all in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. Maaria, I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody, and sadly we have to wrap up. So tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Oh gosh, so we just got done, my family, with Ramadan. So I don't know if anyone knows what that, many of your listeners may know what that is, but it's practiced by 1.6 billion Muslims around the world. But Ramadan is we fast for 30 days, abstain from water and food from morning till evening, dawn till sunset. And during that process, because of COVID, there wasn't a lot of interaction with people. And so there was a lot of reflection and prayer. And I came across this really incredible person I was listening to for a long time, but at a new level. And his name is Hamza Yusuf, Hamza, last name is Yusuf, Yusef. And he is a scholar of Islam. But what's interesting about what he talks about is the power of self and controlling the ego and how we connect with each other and what really the purpose is of our personalities as we navigate through this world. So I've really enjoyed listening to him. He is a convert. He was brought up Baptist. He's a white Caucasian male. And so he gives a lot of interesting perspectives, I think, on life as a whole. And I've been listening to him, quite often about his insight, especially on things like George Floyd and different things.
Brilliant. Well, we will link up with Hamza in the show notes so you guys can check out his work as well. So tell me, who's one person that you just feel is up to brilliant things? So we can continue this path of 6 women have led me to you. Who is the next one that you would like me to lead to that you just feel is up to brilliant things and we could shine a spotlight on them right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I came across this woman named Jackie Camacho Ruiz. She is actually a Latina that lives in Illinois and has gone through quite a few groundbreaking life experiences, and having cancer at a young age, coming to the United States, having no concept of English, but then learning English and German, becoming a pilot and entrepreneur, and just the zest for life. And, I feel like when you meet certain people, your souls connect because what you identify with them may not be the same interest, but just the fact that they're excited to show up every day. Yeah. And then whenever I've met her, she's shown up every day, so much so that I called her and I said, hey, you want to moderate a launch for my book? And she's like, of all the busy things she was doing, she goes, absolutely, 8:00 at night on a weeknight, I'll show up,
Brilliant.
So this is what I mean. And it's an energy, and you can really sense sincere people. So I would say Jackie Camacho Ruiz is a sincere leader doing incredible things.
Brilliant. We'll link her in the show notes as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Oh gosh, I am grateful that things aligned today.
Yes.
Where when I got up this morning, I saw my to-do list and my timeline, and I made a prayer for God to give me barakah in my time. Barakah means expansion, expansion in my time. If anyone knows, President Obama's name is Barack, right? So Barack comes from the term barakah, like expansion of things. And I said, please expand. As I was mopping the floor, I'm like, expand my time, expand my time. Literally, this conversation has been so substantive and everything I would have loved for today. And I'm so grateful that things aligned and then things worked out technology-wise, and that we were able to share some things that I know somebody. I don't care if it's one person or 2 people or 3 or 100 people. If there's one person who is impacted today and their life has changed in a little way, where their day is going to change today, we're supposed to do today, Mary. Our purpose was served.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for you as well. Again, you can link up with Maaria and her team through our website, thesimplifierspodcast.com. That's where all the links to her social media accounts and her website, her book, all the things are there. So Maaria, my final question for you is this, and thank you again so much for your time. I just want to acknowledge you. You're a mom, you're an attorney, you are helping push laws into action to help people with their civil rights. You're doing the thing, and I'm so glad that you are. You're making an impact, so keep going. So someone somewhere is listening to this podcast right now, and she's feeling a stirring kind of deep in her heart or in her soul, and she knows that there is better for her life, for her family, for everything, her trajectory forward. But she is on the precipice of making big change. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Oh, the phrase I use for myself and other people as well, he's got your back. He's got your back. He, meaning God, has got your back. And just take a step forward. Just take a step forward and he'll be right there with you.
Yeah. Maaria, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.